So it is one of Bellator's biggest cards of all time, at least, I mean, it should be presented that way. Obviously, Bellator doesn't really promote their own content all that much, but in the main event this weekend for the Bantamweight Championship, or the Interim Bantamweight Championship, we have got the champ, Raufeon Stots, defending the title against the Italian Gangster in Danny Sabatello. And then, of course, on the other side of the bracket, you got another matchup in the Grand Prix, Patchy Mix taking on Magomedov, and then also a flyweight title fight between Carmouche and Juliana Velasquez, the rematch of their fight originally in Hawaii. And folks, before we get into the video, make sure that subscribe button down below for some more Bellator here on the channel. This video was supposed to go out yesterday, but I am very sick, so if my voice is kind of messed up, it's because of that. Also, go make sure to check out our UFC 282 predictions with Jan Blachowicz and Magomedov Anka live in the main event. Link is in the description down below. So the first four fights, we'll start here with Randy Field taking on Christina. For Randy Field, now currently in Bellator, record of 3-1, actually professionally in Bellator. She does have a record of 1 win and 1 loss, her only loss being to Sumiko Inaba, and also that is where her opponent's last fight was against as well in Sumiko Inaba. So Inaba, of course, beat both these fighters in this fight, but for Randy Field, of course, coming off of that Inaba win, she came back, she beat Mariah Miller, winning that fight by rear naked choke in the second round. So now 1-1 in the Bellator cage. For her opponent here, though, 1-2 professional record, her only win being against a 1-3 fighter, her first fight being a loss to Whitney Piles, a fighter who was 0-3 going into that fight. I think you know where this fight's going to go. Randy Field's going to pick up the win by unanimous decision. Next up, we have got Caspel taking on Jared Scoggins. I think Caspel isn't bad, but he's going to lose this fight, obviously. I think Jared Scoggins gets the win here. For Scoggins, of course, he's coming off the loss to Josh Hill in his last fight. Other than that, for Scoggins, he has looked good. Obviously, that was all outside of Bellator because the Hill fight was his first Bellator bout, but he's taking on Caspel. Bell's 5-2. Back-to-back losses, though, for him. And given they are good fighters, don't get me wrong, Raufeon Stots and Jordan Lugo are very good guys, and he did have 5 straight wins in Bellator before those 2 losses to Stots and Lugo, but still, I think Scoggins is the better fighter. He's got a win for Cody Durden outside Bellator, I guess, or, you know, for the UFC for Durden as well. So he's got a regional win over Durden. Scoggins knows how to mix it up on the feet. I think he's going to have enough to beat Caspel here. As long as he can avoid the ground game, I think Scoggins can go out there and win. Next up, Patrick Downey going to be taking on Christian Eccles here. I mean, no doubt Patrick Downey's going to win this fight here. His first, Bellator fight was the win a couple months ago against Case Nelson. He comes in there, arm triangle choke in 36 seconds. He picks up the win. I think you know where this fight's going as well. I'm going to say submission first round for Patrick Downey here. It doesn't, not much of a controversial pick right there. And then we've got Mark Lemminger taking on Michael Lombardo. I'm going to take Lombardo here. I know he's coming off the loss to Crutchmer in his last fight, but still, he did look pretty good before that fight. Obviously, 0-1 now in Bellator. Actually, 1-1 because he had a fight in Bellator a little while ago, but still, Lombardo's been a guy who's been in the Contender Series before. He ran to Kyle Dawkins in 2019, lost, and for Lemminger, right, back-to-back losses for him. He's lost 4 of his last 5 fights. Given they're really good opponents, though, Yaroslav Amosov, Jaleel Willis, Neiman Gracie, Oliver Inkamp, like some really good fighters Lemminger's been fighting. But again, he's lost 4 of his last 5. I think Lombardo's able to go in here. I think he's able to piece up Lemminger on the feet, and I think Lombardo should be able to strike his way towards a decision, so I'm taking Michael Lombardo here in this fight. So Kai Kamaka III is back, and he'll be taking on Kevin Boehm in this fight. For Kamaka, obviously, coming off a loss in his last fight, it was the L2 Justin Gonzalez. Close fight, but he lost by split decision. Now Kamaka, 1-1 in the second stint in Bellator, right? Of course, Kamaka had the run in the UFC. A lot of just unfortunate fights for him. Obviously, lost to JSP in his first one, but no shame in that. Jonathan Pierce is really running through the division right now. After that, he's got the close loss to TJ Brown. Did he really lose to Brown? I don't think so. And, oh, I forgot. He beat Tony Kelly in his first fight as well. And the draw to Danny Chavez is a close fight, but they cut him after that. He beats John DeJesus after that, and then he loses to Justin Gonzalez. For Kevin Boehm, so far in Bellator, 0-1. He lost to Ahmed Magomedov in his last fight by rear naked choke in the first round. I think it's a fight Kamaka can win. I mean, I think Boehm's going to throw a lot at him on the other side, but if Kamaka is able to stay out of danger here, he should be able to mix it up pretty well with Boehm, and I think he should be able to win. So I'm going to take Kai Kamaka. Again, he's a minus 345 favorite in this fight for a reason, so I'm going to take Kamaka to win this one by decision. So a good fight up next. We've got Kyle Crutchmer taking on Jaleel Willis. For Crutchmer, right, 9-1 so far as a pro. He's taking on Willis, who has lost his last 2 fights. But for Kyle Crutchmer, I mean, the only loss being a fight back in 2020. Since then, 3 straight wins for Crutchmer against really good guys. Levon Shokley, Oliver Enkamp, and Michael Lombardo. All decision wins for Crutchmer. Now, Crutchmer has not gotten a finish in Bellator since, February of 2020, and likely that's not what Crutchmer will offer you, but still a really good fighter who can go the full 15, and he's always going to be in your face for this 15 minutes. He's taking on Jaleel Willis, who, again, has lost back-to-back fights. The Spa Amazi fight was back in January. He lost that one by arm triangle choke in the first round, and he has been submitted in the first round in back-to-back fights. Crutchmer might have a chance of submitting him, too. Obviously, we talked about Crutchmer's only finish so far in Bellator being by submission. But I mean, I wouldn't bank on a Crutchmer finish in this one. I do think he's going to win. I'm going to take him by decision. Minus 300 coming at you for Crutchmer, plus 230 on the other side for Jaleel Willis. So I think Crutchmer will win. I think he is able just to have I think he has the advantage pretty much everywhere against Willis. When you look at Willis's wins, I mean, again, you know, he hasn't been great recently. You know, he's got the win over Mark Levenger back in 2020, but really back-to-back losses for him. He has been taken advantage of, I guess, in the ground. And I think Crutchmer is able to pick up on that. So I'm going to take Kyle Crutchmer to win this one by unanimous decision. All right, next up, we've got Cody Law taking on Chris Lencioni. Cody Law should win this fight. Now, I would be a lot more confident if it wasn't for his last fight. Obviously, he lost to James Gonzalez. The man was a minus 800 favorite, taking on an 8-5 James Gonzalez, and he lost. That was Gonzalez's first ever fight in Bellator. He's coming off a loss in Ring of Combat. It was a confusing fight for Cody Law. He kind of gets tired at the end of it. He just doesn't win the fight. And again, he was undefeated in Bellator to that point. Every single fight of his, he'd won most of them by finish. He was 6-0, and then he runs into Gonzalez and he loses. He'll be taking on Chris Lencioni in this one. For Lencioni, he had back-to-back fights outside of Bellator in his last, or actually 3 straight fights outside of Bellator. He had a loss to Don Shainis, losing that fight by unanimous decision. Obviously, Shainis now in the UFC, just lost to Sodiq Yusuff in 30 seconds. In his last fight, he'll be fighting Jack Jenkins, though, in Australia in a couple months. But after that, Lencioni fights a former UFC fighter in Draco Rodriguez. He beats Rodriguez by unanimous decision. Then he runs into Talon Hoffman after that, beating him by rear naked choke in the first round. This fight's pretty simple. I mean, for Lencioni, he's going to have to get Cody Law down to win this fight or have a chance of winning this fight. And if he does, he's got a really good chance to do so. I just don't know if he's going to be able to bring down the much physically stronger guy, I think, in Cody Law. Law should be able to keep this fight standing, and if he does, I think he's going to, really give Lencioni some problems on the feet. So I think Law is going to keep this fight on the feet, and I think he's just going to outbox Lencioni until eventually he does put him down. So I think Cody Law gets back on the winning ways here. Again, the loss to Gonzalez isn't great, but I think he should be able to bounce back from that. I think, again, this is a fight where he can regroup and get in here, knock out Chris Lencioni in the first round and just get back on the winning ways. If he does get taken down, though, I would be a little bit concerned if he gets taken down early, but I think he's going to avoid that. He'll stuff a couple takedowns, and Cody Law will win this fight by first round knockout. Now we've got Denise Kielholtz taking on Alira Joanne. Honestly, I've thought Denise Kielholtz might have won the championship when she fought Juliana Velasquez. It was a weirder fight. Velasquez wanted to prove, that she could strike with one of the better strikers in the weight class in Denise Kielholtz. And, it's a split decision win for Juliana Velasquez. I think that fight could have gone either way. But since then, for Kielholtz, her last fight was a loss, a triangle choke L to Kana Watanabe in her fight at Bellator 281. Now she's back taking on Joanne in this fight. But for Kielholtz, before that, she was on a 4-fight winning streak over the likes of Christina Williams and Kate Jackson. And you know what Kielholtz is going to bring. A lot of power on the feet. She is a very good striker, and her ground game is getting better as well. She does have a lot of submissions once the fight does reach the mat as well. But for her opponent in this one, Lara Joanne picked up a win over Alejandra Lara in her last fight, winning that one by unanimous decision. Her first win in a while, first win since 2019, which was Beck Rawlings was her last win before beating Lara, because she suffered back-to-back losses to Kana Watanabe and Vanessa Porto. Before Joanne, of course, pretty well all-around fighter here. She can get the fight done on the ground. She can get it done on the feet as well. But honestly, I think Denise Kielholtz is the better fighter. I think she does a better stand-up game. On the ground, I would give the slight advantage to her opponent, but I think Kielholtz is able to get out of these, get out of bad spots once the fight does hit the mat, and I think she should be able to outbox Lara Joanne here, and I think she'll be able to win the fight. Even though she is on a 2-fight losing streak, I think Kielholtz is able to win, so I'm going to take her to win this one by decision. So Anthony Adams finally getting back in the cage here. He'll be taking on Don Rosta in this fight, and for Adams, a lot of just canceled fights. If you look at his Tapology page, he's got, 9 canceled fights in the span of 3 years. It's kind of crazy. But his last 2 fights, he won in his last one at Bellator 266, picking up a huge upset win, winning that fight by unanimous decision. And then before that, he did go in the Contender Series. He lost to Impa Kasanganay. Kasanganay outstruck him. No shame in that. Kasanganay is a really good striker, and I really just want to see him fight again. Oh, he's got a fight scheduled in February. He'll be fighting at Peak Fighting 26. Okay, just found that out for the first time. He's going to be fighting a guy who's 36 years old. He should probably win. Anyways, I think Kasanganay should get a shot on either PFL, Bellator, or the UFC. But anyways, for Anthony Adams, winning his last fight by unanimous decision, and for Adams, decent striking. Doesn't have the most power, honestly, though. Only 1 knockout finish to his name that came back at LFA 57. I'm going to be taking on Don Rosta in this fight. And for Rosta, you know what this guy's going to bring to you. 7-0 professional record for Rosta. Really good wrestler. His stand-up game is getting a lot better, as well as you saw in his last fight. The win over Romero Cotton. Huge knockout finish in the 3rd round. Rosta keeps on getting better and better. He should keep on, working his way up the Bellator ranks here in the middleweight division. Eventually, I think, getting into the top 5 and the top 10. Bellator has been wanting to push Rosta Rosta basically since 2019 when he signed with the promotion, and he has been flawless so far. Rosta's wrestling's good, his striking keeps on getting better by each fight, and he's a minus 750 favorite in this one. So I think Rosta's going to win. I think it's going to take a little bit of time to set up the knockout, but I think Rosta will be able to get the job done. Give me a second round knockout finish for Dalton Rosta, staying undefeated and improving to 8-0 in the Bellator cage. All right, we're going to see who's got the better ground game. Magomedov taking on Patchy Mix. I mean, you know where this fight's going to, for the most part, I think, play out. I mean, you saw the way Patchy Mix went in there, beat Kyoji Horiguchi in his last fight. A huge win for Mix, winning that one by unanimous decision. You saw the way Magomedov won his first round fight in the Grand Prix as well, taking down Enrique Barzola and submitting him in the 4th round. Got him with the guillotine choke. Magomedov's been perfect so far in Bellator with the exception of that one fight against Raufeon Stots. And really, Magomedov's got 2 losses in his entire career. One's to Piotr Jan back in 2017, and the other one is Raufeon Stots. Now, Magomedov does have the win over Jan as well back in 2016, but Magomedov's got an incredible ground game. You look at the way he's able to go through guys like Barzola, like a CJ Hamilton win, but really, Raufeon Stots is Magomedov's first real test, I would say, in Bellator. Because like CJ Hamilton, he was supposed to run right through, obviously. He's like a minus 3,000 favorite going into that one, but Stots was his real first big test, and Stots is like a plus 700 dog win there, beat him by decision, but Magomedov has bounced back. He has beat Barzola since then, but now he gets Patchy Mix. I mean, Mix is good. Mix is really good. Of course, he had lost to Juan Archuleta when he fought him for the championship back in 2020, but since then, 3 straight wins for Mix. It's a arm triangle choke win over Albert Morales. Now, Mix is a minus 1,000 favorite going into that fight, but he beats James Gallagher after that, and then he beats Kyoji Horiguchi by decision. By far, the Horiguchi fight, the biggest win to date for Patchy Mix. The ground game's great at Patchy Mix. He's got 9 submission wins, or 11 submission wins in his career, and the same can be said about Magomedov, 10 submission wins as well. Both these guys can scrap. Both these guys can really go at it on the ground, but ever so slightly, I'm going to take Magomedov to win this fight. I think Magomedov's got the better wrestling, and once the fight does get on the ground, as long as Magomedov's able to stay on top, I think he should be able to control Patchy Mix down there. I think it's going to be a close fight. I think Patchy Mix will have his moments, but ever so slightly, I'm going to take Magomedov to beat Patchy Mix. I think he'll get it done by a 5-round unanimous decision win. So it is the rematch of Liz Carmouche and Juliana Velasquez. Their fight obviously contested just a couple months ago. They are running it back for the World Championship. Actually, it was 8 months now ago, but still, Liz Carmouche and Juliana Velasquez. Of course, Velasquez suffered her first loss to Liz Carmouche, and for Carmouche, so far in Bellator, undefeated, 4-0 with wins over Deanna Bennett, Vanessa Porto, Kana Watanabe, and Juliana Velasquez. And it was weird, of course, because Carmouche gets cut from the UFC after fighting for the championship in Uruguay against Valentina Shevchenko. Of course, Shevchenko beats her by decision. It's a really boring fight, but still, Carmouche gets cut from the UFC after that. She comes into Bellator undefeated so far, 4-0. But let's not forget, Carmouche was losing the Velasquez fight the first time around. She was losing it. Until the 4th round comes, she gets Velasquez in a crucifix, and sure, it's a very good position for her, but the elbows she was raining down were not that nasty. And Mike Beltran's the referee. He stops the fight, even though Velasquez really only had to survive 13 more seconds of those elbows that really weren't doing much damage, because after Beltran pulls Carmouche off of Velasquez, Velasquez pops right back up to her feet. She protests the decision immediately, and it's an interesting call from Beltran. Now, I'm not denying the fact that, okay, Carmouche did a really good job putting herself into that position, but still, I think Velasquez is still the all-around better fighter. When you look at Velasquez's title run, obviously there's only 2 fights because she wins the championship off of Alima Lay McFarlane, and McFarlane, at this point of her career, kind of just, seems checked out of the sport, for being honest. I think that was apparent when she lost to Justine Kish, but still a good win for Velasquez. She beats Kielholtz after that, even though I think you can make the case that Denise wins that fight, and then she loses to Carmouche afterwards. Before, Velasquez, if she can just get Carmouche down, I think she can win. Obviously, I know that, that's where she lost her last fight, but if she's able just to control Liz Carmouche on the ground for 25 minutes, she should be able to win. If she gets stuck in the striking game again, I wouldn't be surprised again if Velasquez can win that type of fight as well. I know Carmouche does have power. She picked up her first knockout win in a million years after she beat Watanabe, but I think Velasquez should be able to keep distance. Carmouche is kind of small for the weight class. I think Velasquez should be able to keep her distance, use her kicks effectively, and she should be able to win that way. All around, I think she's the better fighter, and that's why I'm picking her to win the rematch. Give me Juliana Velasquez to beat Liz Carmouche by decision. Bellator should be promoting this fight like it is the biggest deal of all time. This is a huge fight for them that they haven't marketed all that well. Bellator never does a good job marketing their fights, but this is a big fight. Raufeon Stots, Danny Sabatello, the trash talking involved in this fight, this is a big deal, I think, and it's 2 guys who, the UFC had a chance of getting, and they didn't decide to take them, and now Bellator's got them in a main event spot. Danny Sabatello won the Contender Series. He did not get the contract. Raufeon Stots now had his chance. He would have been signed if he beat Merab Dvalishvili, but he got spinning back-fisted in the face. So, he worked his way back in LFA, got his shot in Bellator, but now both these guys on huge winning streaks. They're fighting for the World Championship now, and I can talk about how Raufeon Stots got to the belt. Obviously, the big wins over Josh Hill, Magomedov, and the big win over Juan Archuleta where he catches him with a head kick, puts him down, and let's be honest, Raufeon Stots is probably down 0-2 going into that third round, but he catches Archuleta on the dome and wins the interim championship that way. But we can talk about all that, and we can talk about how Danny Sabatello, since he's coming to Bellator, after the Contender Series, really, he beat Damon Blackshear, who's now in the UFC. He beat Brett Johns, he beat Jornel Lugo, he beat Leandro Higo. Now he gets Raufeon Stots. That's great and all, but this fight comes down to one thing, is if Danny Sabatello can keep the pressure and he can consistently take down Raufeon Stots for 25 minutes. If he can take him down in 3 of the 5 rounds and hold him down for more than 2.5 minutes in 3 of those 5 rounds, Danny Sabatello is going to win this fight. And I know, sometimes the fight style doesn't really match the talk that he brings, and I think a lot of people draw comparisons of Danny Sabatello to Colby Covington. I like both these guys, but let's be honest with ourselves, Sabatello doesn't fight the same style of fight Colby does. Really, Sabatello is trying to go in there, he is trying to wear you out on the ground. Colby's trying to do the same thing, but Sabatello's striking is not obviously up to par with Covington's. But Sabatello is going to go in here. If he can take down Stots effectively and efficiently, he is going to win this fight. But that's a huge if, because Raufeon Stots, got a really, really good wrestling base as well. I mean, he doesn't show it often, obviously, but you saw the way, he does, honestly, but you saw the way that he was able to fight against Magomedov. He was able to fight off the takedowns. He was able to put himself in good spots to beat a guy whose only loss previous to the fact was against Piotr Jan, right? Stots is a great fighter. He is a really good fighter, and he's able to get out of spots in the ground. He's got good submission skills as well. His jiu-jitsu is pretty good too. And his striking is levels ahead of Danny Sabatello. It just is. We will see if Sabatello is able to set up his takedowns because, he's got to get into range before he does, change levels and go for the shot against Stots, right? And Stots is going to be expecting it. I just don't know if Stots is able to stop it time in and time out because Sabatello is going to keep shooting. He's going to try, you can stuff the first takedown, you can stuff the second, you can stuff the third, but the 4th, 5th, and 6th are coming as well. I think that's why Danny Sabatello is going to win this fight. I think Danny Sabatello is going to win the Bellator Bantamweight Championship here. I think that's what's going to happen. I think Sabatello is going to be able to get to that takedown multiple times in this fight. I think he's going to be able to push Stots back against the fence. I think he's going to be able to get him up against the cage, and he's going to be able to work his takedowns and continuously bring him down to the ground. I think Stots will win a round. I think he'll win 1, but I think that's going to come in maybe the 3rd round. I just think Sabatello's wrestling and his pace is going to be way too much for Stots. And I know it's a different style of fight because, again, Magomedov can do this to Raufeon Stots, but Sabatello's cardio, his pressure, and his all-around wrestling game, I think is going to make it a very tough fight for Super Stots. I'm taking Danny Sabatello, the Italian Gangster, to win the Bellator Bantamweight Championship. And again, in a fight that should be promoted as one of the biggest Bellator fights of all time. 2 really homegrown talents out of Bellator fighting in the main event for a championship. I think the Italian Gangster, Danny Sabatello, beats Raufeon Stots. He out-wrestles him to a world championship. Danny Sabatello and new Bantamweight champion. He wins the title again by out-wrestling Raufeon Stots 4-5 rounds. And folks, thank you for watching our Bellator 289 predictions video here on the channel. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure you leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to go check out our UFC 282 predictions while you're at it as well. Link in the description down below. Again, thanks for watching, and Mamba forever.